Hey, this is one and only storyteller back here at the truck. This is Friday, May the 14th. I haven't did a video the last couple of days because I run into some problems I really didn't know how to resolve, or I don't know if I've resolved them as of yet. So I really didn't make a video. So I'm going to kind of give you a rundown on what's going on and what the problem is. So everything looks cool. Everything looks good, as you can tell. Everything looks fine. So what the problem is the engine will not idle unless you look back here on the adjustment screw, right back here, right there, right there. I had to take the spring out. I had to take the spring out because it wouldn't idle. So, and it had the same problem before the engine was rebuilt, except I just went ahead and finagled with it and kept it running long enough to move it around. But I figure between the engine being wore out and carburetor being setting up for 4 or 5 months, hadn't been run, probably had stuff in the carburetor and fuel pump, so on and so on. So I thought once everything was flushed out and the engine was rebuilt, carburetor's rebuilt, that the problem would go away. Well, upon initial startup, which I was very well pleased with, started up on the 3rd crank. So I ran it the last couple of days, about 20-minute intervals, doing different things to it, trying to get it to come around, but I couldn't get it to come around. It just wouldn't idle. So first thing I done was I went down to the accumulator valve on the transmission, checked it, and lo and behold, the hose was completely off the modulator valve. So I thought, hey, that's cool. This is the problem. This is the reason why it won't idle, sucking too much vacuum. So I put a new vacuum line on it, plugged it back up, come back up here, started the truck back up, and same thing. Which confused me even worse, because how can an engine idle with a 1/4-inch line, and plugging that 1/4-inch line up didn't cause any type of change in the engine idling or running at all. So that kind of befumbled me, greatly. So I went ahead and unplugged it. It's unplugged now, and I put a, if you can tell, I put a block in it right here. So okay, so then I thought, well, maybe the power booster was sucking air through it. So I plugged this up, restarted it, same thing, still won't idle, still won't run. It's like, okay, well, that's not it. Elimination of that one. So then I blocked off this one going to the EGR valve just to make sure. Then I blocked off this one going into the back of the carburetor. Then I blocked off the PCV valve, and still no change. So then I even blocked off the distributor. I plugged it up here with a screwdriver on this end, and there still wasn't any change, and it still would not idle. So I thought, well, the float was the only thing in the carburetor that I did not replace. So I bought a brand new float, set the float on a 1/2 inch from the top of the deck, which is what is factory setting, to the top of the float. Put it back together, fired it back up, still would not idle. Okay, so now this time I'm getting pretty concerned, because this is getting monotonous. It just would not idle no matter what you did to it. So then I went, you probably can't see down in there, I went and cleaned off the dampener again to make sure. I marked it on 12 degrees before top dead center, which is a factory setting. It is running a crane cam, torque cam, and the same cam was running in the engine before. So the timing marks are set dead on, dot to dot, just like it calls for. It ran, in the engine before the rebuild, dot to dot, 10 years with no problems. So Okay, so I come up here. I marked the top of the intake with a piece of soapstone to let me know that if you look down in here, maybe there's number 1 right here. So number 1 would be pointed straight at, straight at that mark on the intake. I thought, well, at least that will get me close, or really close. So fired it up, runs great. It just won't idle. It revs quick. There's no stall. There's no delay. It's cracked like a NASCAR engine. It's really good response. And I'm going like, what in the world is going on? So put the timing light back down on it, down here. So it was on about 25 degrees before top dead center. I brought it down to 20. It seemed okay. Brought it down to 18. It seemed okay. 16 kind of got sluggish. Didn't really like it. Got down to 14 and the engine died and it won't restart. On 14 degrees, you bump it back up to 18. It'll start. It doesn't lash back against the starter. It doesn't go root, root, root. It's just an immediate start. So I remember that we ran it on either 16 or 18 beforehand. We couldn't run it on 12 beforehand either, so due to the cams. So put it back on 18, fired it back up. Cuts off fine. It don't diesel. Fires right up. Pump the gas once, boom, it'll fire up each and every time. Just won't idle. So that's when I took out the spring out of the adjustment screw here. And I kept screwing it down, kept screwing it down, and kept screwing it down. Finally, I screwed it down enough that it would idle. So when it got to idle, I got to looking more at the timing. I got the timing set as close as I could get it, against not running, being sluggish, and things of that nature. So it's, I have a tape of it running. It sounds like a NASCAR engine, but it's not. I mean, it's got some work done to it, but it's not anything close to that. As you can tell, it has a 2-barrel carburetor in it. I thought, well, maybe it's leaning out too much. I went to the back of the truck. It's not leaning out too much. So I went ahead and opened up the needle jets. If you can see them down in there, open up the needle jets another half a turn to make sure it doesn't black smoke, doesn't lean out. I really don't know what it is. I'm confused. I've been working on cars since I was 14 years old. I'm 59 years old now, so kind of at a loss on what in the heck is going on. Every vacuum line on this engine is plugged off. There is no more vacuum lines that is connected that can draw any vacuum. They're all plugged off. One thing I did forget, I'll show you right here. This block back here, I pulled on the one plug. It broke, so I thought maybe it was it, so I plugged it off. I pushed on the one below it down there, as you can see it right there. I pulled on it. It broke off, so I plugged it off. Each time I thought, well, this is going to be it. And just sucking air, we're good to go. I warmed the engine up. I retightened distributor bolts, tightened it down even tighter to make sure. I don't know. Whatever the problem it was the same problem that it had before the rebuild. So I was laying in bed the other night. Of course, a lot of times I can't sleep. I have night terrors and things of this nature. Fire department, things of this nature. Things people shouldn't see and all this, that, and other. But I got to thinking, I don't know if it's possible, but since that fuel pump set for 5 or 6 months with that E85 in it, then maybe, just maybe, it had an effect on the fuel pump. So I thought, and if it did, maybe when it gets down to an idle, the pump is not producing enough volume in order for it to idle, so therefore it dies. So I thought, well, that's a possibility. It makes sense. It has enough reasoning behind it. It, you know, theoretically, I can't pronounce that word. Sorry, y'all, but it just makes sense. It could be a possibility. So I ordered a brand new fuel pump. That's what I've been putting on today. Brand new fuel pump, brand new hose, another brand new hose, a brand new hose down here on the one going from the tank to the fuel pump. So it's all brand new. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say. If this doesn't fix it, and I'm totally, I don't know. I've never had anything like this before. It doesn't overheat. It runs perfectly, straight up and down on normal. And I don't care if you let it sit here for 25 or 30 minutes. It doesn't move. Oil pressure goes all the way over to the A. All the way over to the A, close to the L. It never fluctuates. It never moves. It just dead on the money. And it runs like a screaming banshee, but it just won't idle. I mean, it'll idle without the spring in it, which the spring has to go back in it. It can't be out of it because every time you throttle it 3 or 4 times, the screws out and it won't idle anymore. But as long as you screw it down and don't monkey with it, it'll idle for days. So that's what I'm fixing to do. I'm fixing to fire it up, and we're fixing to see. So I'm going to pause you for just a minute, and I'm going to fire this puppy up, and we're going to see if it's going to idle or not. And I'll be right back.